My mother called my daughter an imposter 3 seconds before the digital family portrait exposed my husband's pregnant mistress. A tea happened at my grandfather's 85th birthday dinner, in a ballroom filled with 200 relatives, employees, foundation donors, and people who had spent decades pretending the Bennett family was incapable of cruelty. My 9-year-old daughter, Sophie, stood beside the enormous projection screen, holding a silver digital frame against her purple dress. She had spent 6 weeks creating what she called the Bennett family story. The frame contained photographs of Grandpa Henry as a young carpenter, my late father opening the first Bennett Heritage office, my mother cutting ribbons at charity events, my husband Evan and me on our wedding day, and Sophie's adoption ceremony 5 years earlier. This is us, Sophie said proudly. Not because everybody has the same face. Because everybody stays. A few guests smiled. Grandpa Henry pressed a hand over his heart, and my mother, Vivian Bennett, stared at the final image, a hand-drawn family tree with Sophie's photograph in the center. Then she lifted her champagne glass and said, loudly enough for the nearest tables to hear, "It's a lovely school project, sweetheart, but you should understand that legal paperwork doesn't make someone real family." The room went silent. Sophie's smile disappeared. I heard my husband inhale beside me, but Evan did not defend her. He looked down at the table. That hurt almost as much as my mother's words. I stood. "We're leaving." "Claire," my mother said impatiently, "don't create a scene. Sophie needs to learn the difference between affection and blood. Especially now." Especially now, the words landed strangely. Before I could ask what she meant, Grandpa Henry struck the floor once with his cane. The sound echoed through the ballroom. "Everyone sit down," he said. My mother's face tightened. "Dad, this is unnecessary." I said, "Sit down, Vivian." Grandpa rarely raised his voice. He never needed to. He had founded Bennett Heritage Group with 1 pickup truck, 2 ladders, and a talent for turning condemned buildings into landmarks. Even after stepping away from daily operations, he controlled the family trust and enough voting shares to end careers with a signature. My mother lowered herself into her chair, stayed beside Sophie. Grandpa looked directly at her. "You are my great-granddaughter," he said. "You were my great-granddaughter the day Claire brought you home. You were my great-granddaughter when the judge signed the adoption order. And you will remain my great-granddaughter after every coward at this table is gone." Sophie swallowed hard. "Really?" she whispered. "Really?" Grandpa turned toward my mother. "The Bennett Trust has recognized legally adopted descendants since 1989. I wrote that language myself. Anyone claiming otherwise is either ignorant or lying." A murmur spread across the room. My mother's hand tightened around her glass. Then Sophie's digital frame chimed. The projection screen changed. Instead of the hand-drawn family tree, a photograph appeared from an album I had never seen. My husband stood outside the Lakeview Fertility Center, kissing a woman in a camel-colored coat. His hand rested possessively on her pregnant stomach. The woman was Naomi Price, his executive assistant. Around her wrist was the blue enamel bracelet I had worn through 3 years of fertility treatments, the bracelet that had disappeared from my bedroom 6 months earlier. The date in the corner of the photograph was 12 days old. Someone gasped. Evan lunged for the cable connecting the frame to the ballroom projector. The screen went black, but not before I saw the name of the album displayed across the top. "A Real Family." Grandpa Henry's voice became dangerously calm. "No one leaves," he said. "We're going to find out exactly what real family means tonight." And for the first time, my husband looked afraid. Evan recovered quickly, always did. That was one of the reasons he had risen from an entry-level finance analyst to chief financial officer of Bennett Heritage Group in less than 10 years. He could walk into a room after making a catastrophic mistake and convince everyone else they had misunderstood what they had seen, held the disconnected cable in one hand and forced a laugh. "This is a synchronization error." Naomi sat 4 tables away with several members of the finance department. She wore a loose black dress, but now that I knew what to look for, her pregnancy was obvious. She pressed one hand against her stomach. My mother rose and positioned herself between Naomi and the curious guests. "How did a private photograph get into Sophie's presentation?" she demanded. As though the invasion of Naomi's privacy were the real offense, Sophie looked terrified. "I didn't put it there." "I know," I said, kneeling beside her. You did nothing wrong. Evan had helped Sophie set up the digital frame that morning. He had connected it to his tablet because the ballroom network required an adult administrator account. The frame must have synchronized with one of his cloud albums, an album called Our Real Family. Grandpa pointed his cane toward the doors. Security will keep the press and guests inside until my attorney arrives. Dad, you can't imprison people, my mother snapped. I'm asking people who claim to love me to remain for 10 minutes. Anyone who finds that unbearable may reconsider accepting invitations to my home. No one moved. Evan came toward me. Claire, let's speak privately. You can explain here. His eyes flicked toward Sophie, not in front of her. You weren't worried about her when you named an album Our Real Family. His face hardened. That album isn't mine. You were in the photograph. Naomi had an appointment. She was upset. I went with her as her employer. Do you kiss every frightened employee outside medical clinics? He lowered his voice. You're emotional. There it was, the first brick in the wall he intended to build around me, not betrayed, not observant, emotional. Naomi suddenly stood. I should go. As she turned, her coat fell open. She was much further along than I had first realized. At least 7 months. Then I saw something protruding from her handbag. A white folder bearing the Lakeview Fertility Center logo. On the corner, written in black marker, was a patient number I recognized instantly. LC-44719.my patient number. The number printed on every blood test, ultrasound invoice, consent form, and embryo storage bill from the worst 3 years of my life. Naomi covered the folder with her coat, but she was too late. Had seen it. The photograph was not the most frightening thing in the room anymore. The woman carrying my husband's secret child was using my fertility clinic file. Grandpa's attorney, Raymond Shaw, arrived 20 minutes later, was 72, silver-haired, and so controlled that even his briefcase seemed incapable of making an unnecessary sound. Raymond asked the ballroom technicians to preserve the projector logs and event recording. He collected Sophie's digital frame and placed it in an evidence bag with her permission. It's my present for Grandpa, Sophie whispered. You'll get it back, he promised. My mother objected immediately. This is absurd. We've humiliated a pregnant woman in front of 200 people because a child connected the wrong photo account. Raymond looked at her. Who said Naomi was pregnant? My mother froze. No one had publicly said it. The photograph suggested pregnancy, but Naomi's dress could have concealed anything. Evan had not admitted it. Naomi had not spoken, yet my mother had identified her condition without hesitation. Grandpa noticed too. His eyes narrowed. Naomi reached for Evan's hand beneath the table. That small gesture ended whatever remained of my marriage. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not a comforting kiss between colleagues. It was intimacy practiced so often that they reached for each other under pressure. I took Sophie home before Raymond finished interviewing the ballroom staff. During the drive, she remained quiet in the back seat. At a red light, she finally asked, Did Grandma mean I'm pretend? I pulled into an empty parking lot because I could not answer while driving. I climbed into the back seat and held both her hands. You are not pretend. She said papers don't make family. Grandma was wrong. Then why didn't Dad say anything? That question cut deeper. Evan and I had adopted Sophie together. He had attended parenting classes, background interviews, home inspections, and every court hearing. The day the adoption became final, he had carried Sophie out of the courthouse on his shoulders. For years, I had believed he loved her as fiercely as I did. I don't know why he stayed quiet, I said. But his silence was wrong too. She leaned against me. Is the baby in that lady's stomach Dad's real kid? I could not lie. I don't know. Sophie was silent for several seconds, then she said something that made my skin turn cold. I heard Grandma talking to Dad before dinner. About what? They didn't know I was behind the curtain. Grandma said, once the baby is born, Henry won't be able to keep pretending that girl comes first. What did Dad say? Sophie's fingers tightened around mine. He said, Claire will sign before she understands what she's giving away. Evan arrived home shortly after midnight. Sophie was asleep in my room with our golden retriever curled against her feet, waited in the downstairs study. The desk said a stack of documents Evan had asked me to sign 3 days earlier, had described them as routine restructuring papers, connected to the company's new hotel division. I had been too busy preparing Grandpa's birthday restoration exhibit to read them carefully. Now I did. The first document granted Evan expanded authority over several joint investment accounts. The second allowed him to act as my financial representative if I became temporarily incapacitated. The third was a consent form acknowledging that any child conceived through fertility treatment during our marriage would be considered a marital child, regardless of the gestational carrier. I read that paragraph 3 times. When Evan entered the study, he stopped in the doorway. "You went through my desk?" "It's my desk." He loosened his tie. "Claire, tonight was a disaster, but it doesn't have to destroy us. Is Naomi pregnant with your child?" He walked to the bar and poured himself bourbon. "Naomi is carrying a baby." "That wasn't my question. We should discuss this with professionals." "Is she carrying your child?" He drank. "Yes." The word was almost a relief. At least one lie had become solid enough to fight. "How long have you been sleeping with her?" "It wasn't planned." "How long?" 11 months. Naomi was approximately 7 months pregnant. The timeline fit. I pointed toward the documents. "What am I giving away?" His expression barely changed, but I saw the calculation behind his eyes. "That paperwork protects everyone." "Why does it mention a gestational carrier?" "Because Naomi's pregnancy involved fertility treatment." My heartbeat slowed, not from calm, from fear. Why was my patient number on her file? He looked away. "Lakeview may have reused an old marital account. Clinics don't accidentally assign one woman another patient's medical identity." "You don't understand the administrative process." "I understand my own name." He set down his glass. "Naomi is carrying our child." I stared at him. He stepped closer. "You wanted a biological child for years. We had embryos stored. After you refused to continue treatment, I made a decision." My mouth went dry. "Our embryos were destroyed." "That's what you requested." "Yes." He did not answer. I heard the truth in the silence. "You used one. Claire, you put our embryo inside your mistress." His jaw tightened. "Naomi is a gestational carrier. She is the woman you've been sleeping with." The relationship developed afterward. I laughed once, a broken sound I did not recognize. "You expect me to believe you secretly transferred our embryo into your assistant and then accidentally began an affair?" "I expect you to think about the baby." "I am thinking about the baby. I'm also thinking about forged consent, stolen medical records, and the fact that you tried to make me sign away financial control." Evan's expression changed. The charm disappeared. "You need to be careful," he said. "Is that a threat?" "It's advice." "You're upset." "Sophie is upset." If you make reckless accusations, people may question whether you're capable of making decisions for either child. Either child. He had already placed Naomi's baby beside Sophie in some invisible custody battle. Gathered the documents. Evan reached for them. I stepped back. "Don't." His eyes dropped to the papers. Then he smiled. "You should check your email," he said. "You already approved the transfer." The email had been sent from my account 4 months earlier. T approved the release of one frozen embryo from Lakeview Fertility Center to a gestational carrier named Naomi Price. The message included scanned copies of my driver's license, my signature, and a notarized consent form. It looked authentic. It was not 4 months earlier. I had been in Savannah supervising the emergency restoration of a 19th century courthouse after a fire. My phone had been damaged by water on the second day. Evan had arranged a replacement and restored my accounts. He had possessed my passwords, identification scans, and access to the email address connected to Lakeview. The notarization belonged to a man named Peter Lang. Recognized him as a consultant who occasionally worked with Bennett Heritage's finance division. "Peter witnessed your signature," Evan said. "I've never met Peter Lang outside a boardroom. He'll say otherwise." The confidence in his voice frightened me more than anger would have. "You planned this carefully." "I planned a family." You already had one. His gaze moved toward the ceiling, toward the room where Sophie slept. Adoption was your choice. Our choice. I tried to support you. You signed the petition. Because you were falling apart. The cruelty came so easily that I wondered how long he had been saving it. After our third failed embryo transfer, I had wanted to stop. I could not endure another hormone cycle, another positive test followed by blood, another doctor explaining that hope did not guarantee a child. 2 years later, we met 6-year-old Sophie through a foster placement program. Evan had cried at our adoption hearing. Now he spoke as though he had merely tolerated her. You never considered Sophie your daughter, I said. I care about her. That is not what I asked. He sighed. Biology matters to some people. To my mother. To the trust. Grandpa said the trust recognizes adoption. Your grandfather is 85. He changes his mind depending on who last spoke to him. There it was, the second part of the plan: discredit Grandpa, discredit me, control the trust. Evan put on his suit jacket. I'm staying at the Mercer Hotel tonight. Tomorrow, we'll meet with family council and discuss a reasonable transition. Transition to what? A formal separation. Shared custody of Sophie. A parenting agreement for the baby. And temporary management safeguards for the company. You mean you keep my shares while you move in with Naomi? I mean we avoid a scandal that could destroy everything your grandfather built. I held up the forged fertility consent. You already created the scandal. No, Evan said. I created evidence that you approved everything. Then he walked out. At 6 the next morning, Grandpa Henry called me. Bring Sophie to my house, he said. And don't use a vehicle Evan can track. I borrowed my neighbor's car. Grandpa lived in the first home he had ever restored, a red brick Georgian outside Baltimore. Raymond Shaw met us at the side entrance and immediately placed our phones inside signal-blocking pouches. Sophie went to the kitchen with Grandpa's housekeeper, Mrs. Alvarez, who had promised chocolate chip pancakes. Grandpa led me into his library. He looked older than he had the night before. I should have stopped your mother years ago, he said. This is Evan's fault. It is Evan's crime. It may be Vivian's design. Raymond opened a leather folder and placed the original Bennett family trust on the desk. The adoption clause was exactly as Grandpa had described. Any child legally adopted before the age of 18 held the same status as a biological descendant. Sophie is protected, Raymond said. Her beneficial interest cannot be removed merely because Vivian dislikes it. Then why would they need Naomi's baby? Grandpa looked toward the window. The trust distributes voting authority differently when a beneficiary becomes medically incapable or dies. If something happened to you, a biological child, or legally recognized child, could hold your branch's interest through a guardian. Evan. Yes. My stomach turned. Grandpa continued. Vivian has asked me repeatedly to amend the trust to prioritize biological descendants. I refused. 3 weeks ago, she began gathering statements suggesting I suffer from cognitive decline. Are you? I'm old, not incompetent. Raymond handed me another document. It was a draft petition requesting temporary guardianship over Grandpa's financial affairs. The proposed guardian was my mother. The supporting declaration had been prepared by Bennett Heritage's chief financial officer, Evan. They plan to take control of you, I said, and remove you from the board under the claim that emotional instability has impaired your judgment. Grandpa touched the forged fertility consent. A baby conceived from your embryo would be a biological Bennett descendant. If Evan obtained control over both children, he could eventually control your entire branch of the trust. Sophie heard him say I would sign before I understood. Raymond nodded grimly. The documents you refused last night would have given him the mechanism. Why expose the affair at the party? They didn't intend to, Grandpa said. The frame did that. Sophie's present had interrupted a plan months in the making. What happens now? Grandpa's eyes met mine. We let them believe the plan is still working. Naomi called me that afternoon. Her voice shook. I need to explain. Did you know the embryo was mine? Silence. Yes. The honesty surprised me. Did you know I never consented? No. Evan showed me the forms. You were sleeping with him. Not when the process started. You expect me to believe that? I was his assistant. He said you couldn't carry another pregnancy and that you were considering surrogacy. He said you wanted privacy because of your family's public profile. Why didn't you ever speak to me? He said you didn't want contact. That should have concerned you. It did. But not enough to stop. Naomi began crying. I felt no sympathy yet, perhaps one day I would. That afternoon, all I could imagine was her wearing my bracelet while my husband touched a child created from my body. What did Evan promise you? A medical stipend. Housing. Then things changed. You began sleeping together. He said your marriage had been over for years. It wasn't over when he came home every night. I know that now. Do you? She breathed unsteadily. There's something you should see. Send it to my attorney. I can't. Evan checks my phone. Then why are you calling? I bought a prepaid phone. That meant fear had entered their relationship. Meet me tomorrow, Naomi said. The Botanical Garden. 10 in the morning. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. For the first time, her voice became firm, but Evan told me Sophie would go to boarding school after the divorce. He said she was too attached to you and would interfere with the baby's adjustment. My hand tightened around the phone. He plans to take Sophie? He plans to take everything. Before I could ask another question, Naomi whispered, "Someone's coming." The call ended. 30 seconds later, a text arrived from an unknown number. It contained a photograph of a handwritten schedule. At the top were 3 words, Succession Announcement Timeline. The first listed event was Grandpa's birthday. The second was my removal from the company board. The third was Naomi's baby shower. The final entry was dated 2 days after Naomi's expected delivery. Claire. Permanent incapacity order. Naomi arrived wearing sunglasses and no makeup. Without the polished clothes and controlled smile I had seen at company events, she looked younger than 30. She also looked exhausted, sat on a bench near the tropical greenhouse, surrounded by families and tourists. You have 10 minutes, I said. She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a hotel key card, a pharmacy receipt, and a photograph of Evan standing beside my mother in a private clinic office. Your mother arranged everything, Naomi said. I stared at the photograph. Vivian was shaking hands with Dr. Samuel Leland, Lakeview Fertility Center's medical director. The image had been taken 9 months earlier. Why would you photograph them? I didn't. Evan sent it to me. He wanted me to know your family approved. My family did not approve. Your mother said the baby would heal the Bennett bloodline. I nearly laughed at the obscenity of the phrase. What does the hotel key open? Room 1408 at the Mercer. Evan keeps a separate laptop there. Why give this to me? Naomi looked down at her stomach. Last week, I heard him tell your mother that once the baby was born, I would no longer be useful. What did you think would happen? He promised to marry me. While still married to me? He said the divorce papers were ready. They weren't. I know. Naomi pressed a hand against her back. He said we would raise the baby together. Yesterday, I found a draft custody petition calling me an emotionally unstable surrogate who had violated professional boundaries. Evan had created versions of the same trap for both of us. What do you want? I asked. Protection. From prosecution? From him. You used my medical identity. I signed papers using the name the clinic gave me. They said it was required for confidentiality. You wore my bracelet. Her face flushed. Evan gave it to me. He said it had belonged to his mother. It belonged to me. I'm sorry. Sorry was too small, but fear was real, and frightened people sometimes carried evidence. Did you save the custody petition? He deleted it. Did you photograph it? No. Then what can you prove? Naomi reached into her bag and removed a small black smartwatch. Evan bought this for me to monitor the pregnancy. It automatically records voice notes when I say a command. She placed it in my palm. I forgot it was recording during a conversation last week. What conversation? The one where your husband explained what he planned to do after you were declared unstable. Chapter 9. 3 Women, 3 Lies. Maya Ortiz had been my closest friend since architecture school and my attorney since I joined the Bennett board. She listened to the smartwatch recording in her office while a forensic technician created 2 verified copies. Evan's voice filled the conference room. Claire signs, Henry is removed, and Vivian takes temporary trust authority. My mother replied, what about the girl? Sophie goes with me initially. It makes me look responsible. And Naomi? A pause, then Evan said, she'll sign the post-birth agreement. If she refuses, the clinic records show she used Claire's identity. She'll cooperate. Naomi's voice came from farther away, you told me Claire approved the transfer. Evan answered, keep your voice down. I saw the petition. You're planning to call me unstable. You're tired. You lied to me. I protected you. Then my mother spoke, the baby matters. The carrier does not. The recording ended with a door slamming. Maya removed her headphones. Your mother is astonishing. That is a diplomatic word. The recording helps, but we need to prove authenticity and establish the fertility fraud independently. Naomi's cooperation will be attacked because she participated. What about the hotel laptop? Entering the room without authorization could destroy our case. I have a key. A key is not permission. What if Naomi retrieves it? If the room is registered to her or she has authorized access, possibly. We verify first. Maya leaned back. Claire, you need to prepare for Evan to file against you. He already threatened me. He'll say the embryo transfer was consensual. He'll produce the email, notarized document, and witness. He may say you agreed to a private arrangement and changed your mind after learning about the affair. That is insane. It is also simple enough for the public to understand. People believe documents. They also believe recordings. Not when the people recorded claim the file was altered. She tapped the smartwatch. This is one piece. We need a chain. Dramatic photograph, forged consent, bank payment, clinic record, audio confession, custody plan. Each clue had to connect to the next. Maya's assistant entered carrying an overnight envelope. Inside was a petition filed by Evan that morning. He requested temporary exclusive use of our home, emergency control of our joint financial accounts, and an expedited psychological evaluation of me. Attached was a written declaration from Peter Lang, the notary. He swore he had watched me sign the fertility consent. Maya turned the final page toward me. My mother had submitted a supporting statement. Vivian claimed I had become increasingly irrational since Sophie's adoption and that my behavior now endangered both children. Chapter 10. The edited video. By evening, a 38-second video from Grandpa's birthday dinner had spread across social media. It began after the photograph appeared on the screen. The footage showed me pointing at Naomi and shouting, "You used my patient number." Then it jumped to Sophie crying, then to Naomi holding her stomach while guests surrounded her. The caption read, "Bennett heiress attacks pregnant surrogate after private agreement becomes public." The video omitted my mother's insult. It omitted Grandpa's defense of Sophie. It omitted Evan kissing Naomi on the screen. It omitted almost everything that mattered. Bennett Heritage's communications director issued a statement claiming the company was reviewing a sensitive family disagreement involving a medically vulnerable woman. Within 2 hours, 3 board members asked me to take temporary leave. Evan had moved faster than I expected. Grandpa called an emergency board meeting, but my mother submitted the competency petition before it could occur. Until the court reviewed Grandpa's capacity, Raymond advised him not to make sudden trust changes that might be portrayed as evidence of impairment. They trapped us, I said. Temporarily, Raymond replied. Then Lakeview Fertility Center reported a cybersecurity incident. Patient records connected to my old account became unavailable. The clinic's attorney claimed no one could verify whether the embryo release documents in Evan's possession matched the original file. Peter Lang stopped answering calls. Naomi disappeared from the Mercer Hotel. Her prepaid number went dead. The smartwatch recording remained, but she was no longer available to authenticate the surrounding circumstances. Friday. Evan had temporary control of our largest joint account. The family court declined to remove Sophie from my care but ordered both Evan and me not to discuss the case publicly. He received scheduled parenting time. When I told Sophie she would have dinner with him Saturday, she shook her head. He doesn't want me. He is still legally your father. Grandma says legal doesn't make real. I closed my eyes. My mother's poison had entered my daughter's understanding of herself. That night, Sophie asked for the digital frame. Raymond still has it. I need it. Why? She hesitated, because the picture of Dad and the pregnant lady wasn't the only new picture. I sat beside her. What else did you see? A folder with my name. Chapter 11. Sophie's folder. Raymond brought the frame to Maya's office the next morning. The forensic technician explained that although Evan had disconnected the projector, the frame had retained a local cache of recently synchronized files. Most were photographs from the hidden album, Naomi at the clinic. Evan assembling a crib in the Mercer Hotel suite. My mother touching Naomi's stomach at a private lunch. A photograph of the forged consent. A photograph of the succession schedule. Then we found the folder labeled Sophie. It contained copies of school records, therapy notes from her foster care transition, and documents from our adoption proceeding. One file was a draft application to the Wexler Residential Academy in Virginia. Boarding tuition had already been paid for the upcoming semester. The payment came from our joint account. Evan had planned to send Sophie away before telling either of us. Another document was titled Attachment Disruption Assessment. A private psychologist I had never met had written that Sophie's excessive dependence on the adoptive mother could make continued placement in my soul care emotionally damaging. The report recommended structured separation. The author was Dr. Melissa Crane. Maya searched her professional history. She consults for Lakeview Fertility Center. The scheme was not merely financial. They intended to create a paper trail portraying Sophie's love for me as pathology. I left the room and became sick in the restroom. For several minutes, I gripped the sink and stared at my reflection. Had spent the previous week trying to think strategically. Now I wanted to break every window in the Mercer Hotel. Instead, I washed my face. When I returned, Sophie was sitting at the conference table coloring beside Maya's assistant. She looked up. Was the folder bad? It proved you were right to tell me. Are they sending me away? No, I crouched beside her. No one is sending you anywhere. What if the judge says they can? Then I will tell the judge the truth. What if Dad lies? Then we prove he lied. She studied my face. Grandpa said Bennett women don't run from fires. Grandpa had said that about our restoration work. Old buildings sometimes had to be entered after a fire to determine what could still be saved. Kissed Sophie's forehead. He's right. The technician called my name. He had found one more cached file. It was a photograph of a courier receipt from Lakeview. 2 cryogenic containers had been released under my patient number. Not 1.2. Chapter 12. The missing embryo. During my fertility treatment, Evan and I had created 3 viable embryos. 2 transfers had failed. The clinic told me the 3rd embryo remained in storage until I signed the destruction authorization 18 months later. Had lived with guilt over that decision. I remembered sitting in our kitchen, holding the pen for nearly an hour. Evan had told me continuing to pay storage fees would keep us trapped in grief. He said destroying the embryo would allow us to move forward with adoption. Signed, believed I had. The courier receipt showed 2 containers leaving Lakeview under my patient number 9 months earlier. 1 had gone to a clinic in Maryland. The other had been shipped to Portland, Oregon. That makes no sense, I said. There was only 1 embryo left. Unless one of the earlier transfers was falsely recorded as unsuccessful, Maya said. The thought made me dizzy. Or the container held something else, Raymond added. The Maryland delivery matched the clinic where Naomi had undergone her transfer. The Portland recipient was hidden behind a medical privacy code, could not investigate it without a court order. For now, Naomi's pregnancy remained the urgent case. Maya filed an emergency request for preservation of all Lakeview records, backups, courier logs, and surveillance footage. She also demanded an independent audit before the clinic could restore or modify its server. Grandpa's foundation owned the building housing Lakeview that gave us access to property security records, though not patient files. 9 months earlier, a camera had captured my mother, Evan, Naomi, Peter Lang, and Dr. Leland entering through a private rear entrance after business hours, was not with them. The timestamp matched the forged notarization claiming I had signed the consent in Dr. Leland's office. Peter Lang had sworn I was present at 8:14 p.m. At 8:14 p.m. The security video showed 5 people entering, none was me. More importantly, I could prove exactly where I had been. That night was Sophie's school winter concert. Had sat in the front row, hundreds of parents had seen me. The school had live-streamed the performance. At 8:14 p.m., I was visible on camera applauding while Sophie sang a solo. The lie had acquired a timestamp, and my daughter had unknowingly given me an alibi. Chapter 13. My mother's price. I confronted my mother at her townhouse. Maya advised against it. I went anyway, wearing a discreet recording device and carrying none of the evidence we had collected. Vivian received me in her drawing room as though we were meeting to discuss flower arrangements. You look tired, she said. You called my daughter unstable. I said she has attachment issues. You tried to send her to boarding school. Evan believes structure would help her. Evan is sleeping with his assistant. My mother lifted her teeth. Marriages fail. Did you pay for Naomi's embryo transfer? Her hand paused. Do not ask questions unless you are prepared for the answers. I'm prepared. You refused your duty. My duty? To continue the Bennett line. I nearly died during the second transfer. You recovered. I adopted a child. You brought home someone else's child and demanded that everyone pretend she could inherit generations of work. She legally can. Your grandfather made an emotional mistake. He wrote the adoption clause before I was born. My mother's expression sharpened. Your grandfather built the company. Your father nearly destroyed it. You repair buildings, Claire. I repair family damage. You created a child through fraud. I secured the future. With my embryo. With material you had chosen to discard. The words struck me physically. You knew I never consented. You had already made your decision. That did not give you ownership of my body. It was microscopic tissue in a freezer. It was mine. It was Bennett. There it was, the belief beneath everything. I and my mother's mind, family blood belonged to the family institution. Individual consent was an inconvenience. Did Evan know you forged my signature? He knew what was necessary. And Naomi? She accepted generous compensation. She thought I agreed. Vivian laughed softly. Naomi believes whatever the last man in an expensive suit tells her. You're planning to take her baby. The child is yours genetically. Not because I chose it. Choice is an indulgence. I stood. My mother's gaze followed me. You should accept the arrangement. Divorce Evan quietly. Allow him primary custody of the infant. Keep Sophie if you insist. We can protect your position in the company. You mean I can keep the consolation child? Her face showed no shame. You said it, not me. I walked toward the door. Behind me, Vivian said, you cannot defeat documents with feelings. I turned. No, I said. But I can defeat forged documents with timestamps. For the first time, my mother's composure broke. Chapter 14. The witness who disappeared. Peter Lang was found in a motel outside Richmond, had not disappeared voluntarily. Evan had arranged for him to take a vacation after the party and paid him through a consulting company called Harbor Family Services. Maya's investigator located the payment trail. When Peter realized Evan had frozen the final installment, he contacted us. He admitted notarizing my signature without my presence, he claimed. Dr. Leland assured him I had signed electronically and that the in-person acknowledgement was a formality. Then my mother paid him $50,000. Will you testify? Maya asked. Peter looked toward the motel window. I need immunity. You committed fraud, she said. I can't promise immunity. Then I have nothing to say. He ended the meeting. The following morning, Peter signed a new affidavit. This one stated that I had attended the clinic disguised in a hat and face mask because I wanted privacy. The lie was ridiculous. It was also dangerous. Evan's attorney submitted it before we could reveal the school concert video. At the next custody hearing, his lawyer argued that I had approved the embryo transfer and was now trying to erase my decision because of jealousy. The judge refused to change Sophie's residence but expanded Evan's parenting time and appointed a custody evaluator. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded me. Mrs. Cole, did you authorize your assistant to carry your child? Are you trying to take the baby from the surrogate? Did you assault Naomi Price at the birthday dinner? I said nothing. That evening, the Bennett Heritage Board placed me on administrative leave. My mother became acting chair. Evan remained CFO. Grandpa's competency hearing was moved forward. Then Raymond Shaw resigned as trustee counsel. His letter stated that family conflict had made his continued representation untenable. Read it twice. Unable to believe it, Grandpa called me. Raymond handed Vivian privileged files before he left. Why would he do that? I don't know. For the first time in my life, Grandpa sounded uncertain. Our oldest ally had abandoned us. The clinic records were missing. Naomi had vanished. Peter had changed his story. Why Mother controlled the board, Evan controlled our money. And the court had begun to treat my husband's fiction as a legitimate dispute. That night, someone threw a brick through my kitchen window. A note was wrapped around it. Stop trying to steal another woman's baby. Sophie stood in the hallway staring at the broken glass. Mom. She whispered, are we losing? I wanted to promise we were not. Instead, I told her the truth. Right now, it looks that way. Chapter 15. The thing about old buildings. The next morning, Sophie and I drove to a restoration site on Chesapeake Bay. The property was an abandoned women's hospital built in 1903. Bennett Heritage had planned to convert it into affordable senior housing before my suspension. Walked through the empty maternity ward while rain tapped against the boarded windows. Sophie stayed close. Why are we here? She asked. Because I think better in broken buildings. Is this one going to fall down? No. It looks worse than it is. I showed her a scorched ceiling beam. See that dark wood? There was a fire here 60 years ago. Everyone assumed the whole wing had to be demolished. But it didn't. The outside was burned, but the center stayed strong. She touched the beam carefully. How can you tell? You test what people can't see. My own words stopped me. He had been defending ourselves against the documents Evan chose to show. The forged consent. Peter's affidavit, the edited party video, the psychological report. He needed to test the structure behind them. Who created the documents? Who paid them? When were they modified? Where had they been stored? I called Maya. Stop trying to prove only that I didn't sign. What do you mean? Prove when the document was created. The version Evan filed might not be the version sent to the clinic. There was a pause. That could work. The cached photograph from Sophie's frame showed the consent displayed on Evan's laptop. Digital files often retained metadata even when printed copies did not. The original document had been created after the date of the alleged signing. The notarization would collapse. Also examined Dr. Crane's assessment of Sophie. The document claimed 3 clinical interviews had occurred. On 2 of those dates, Sophie and I had been in Toronto for a restoration conference. Passport records, hotel receipts, and photographs proved it. Dr. Crane had diagnosed a child she had never met. The reports looked solid from the outside. Inside, they were burned through. As we left the hospital, Sophie slipped her hand into mine. You're going to test Dad's lies? Yes. What if there are too many? Then we test them one at a time. My phone rang. It was Naomi. Her voice was barely audible. I'm at St. Catherine's Hospital. Are you in labor? No, what happened? Someone changed my medication. Then she began to cry. Claire, I think they're trying to make me look unstable. Chapter 16. The hospital room. Naomi had been admitted for severe dizziness and dehydration. doctors believed her prescription had been switched with a different medication before she arrived at the hospital. They stabilized her and confirmed the baby appeared unharmed. She did not know who had changed the bottle. Evan arrived 20 minutes after me, his face transformed when he saw us together. "What is she doing here?" he demanded. Naomi gripped the blanket. "I called her." "Why?" "Because I don't trust you." He glanced toward the nurse. "Naomi is experiencing anxiety." "I'm experiencing evidence," she said. She pulled a plastic hospital bag from the bedside drawer. Inside was the medication bottle. "The pharmacy label says it was picked up yesterday." Evan frowned. "So? I've been in the hospital since yesterday morning. I never picked it up." "Maybe the pharmacy made a mistake." "The signature is yours." His face changed, only slightly, but I saw it. Naomi saw it too. "You said you were getting my regular refill," she whispered. "I did. The pills weren't the same. I didn't inspect them. I stepped between them." "Leave." Evan looked at me as though I had spoken in a language he did not recognize. "That is my child. That is Naomi's hospital room. I'm her emergency contact." "Not anymore," Naomi said. She asked the nurse to remove him. Hospital security escorted Evan out while he protested that I was manipulating a medically vulnerable woman. Once the door closed, Naomi began shaking. "I didn't think he would hurt the baby." "We don't know what he intended," I said. "The medication may have been meant to make you confused or unreliable." "The custody petition." "Yes." If Naomi appeared unstable, Evan could argue that she was unfit to make decisions after the birth, and why mother had called her the carrier, not the mother, not a person, a container whose credibility could be discarded. Naomi looked at me. "I'll testify." "You may face charges." "I know." "You may lose every promise he made." "I already did." She touched her stomach. "I thought carrying this baby would make me important. I thought Evan loved me. Then I realized he only loves ownership." The hospital door opened. A nurse handed me an envelope delivered by courier. Inside was Raymond Shaw's resignation letter. This copy contained a handwritten note. "Did not abandon you. Vivian believes I did. Check the basement archive before Thursday's gala." Come Alone of Chapter 17. Raymond's Betrayal. The basement archive beneath Bennett Heritage's original headquarters contained 80 years of contracts, architectural drawings, board minutes, and trust correspondence. Raymond waited beside a row of fireproof cabinets. "I'm sorry," he said. "Grandpa thinks you betrayed him." He needed to believe it. Vivian had begun monitoring his calls. "You gave her privileged documents." "I gave her copies of documents she already possessed. In return, she granted me temporary access to the trust office and assumed I was helping her prepare the succession announcement." Thursday's gala was the annual Bennett Foundation Heritage Awards, and why mother intended to use it to announce that Grandpa had voluntarily transferred temporary trust authority to her. "He hasn't," Raymond said. "But they created a draft declaration carrying an electronic signature copied from an older filing." "Another forgery. What's in the archive?" Raymond opened a cabinet. "Your grandfather anticipated a future dispute over adoption. In 2004, after a cousin challenged the trust language, Henry recorded a formal statement explaining his intent. He inserted an old memory card into a reader. Grandpa appeared on the screen 22 years younger. Family is created by responsibility," he said in the recording. "Any legally adopted child of my descendants shall be equal in every distribution, vote, protection, and benefit. No trustee may establish a preference for bloodline." The statement had been filed with the trust amendments and witnessed by 3 attorneys. Why mother could not plausibly claim Grandpa had recently invented the interpretation because of cognitive decline. Raymond opened another folder. It contained sealed voting proxies Grandpa had executed months earlier, granting me authority if Vivian attempted to suspend his rights through a competency petition. Why didn't we use these before? Because Vivian needed to commit herself publicly. If we produced them too soon, she would withdraw the false declaration and blame Evan. "You're setting a trap." "Your grandfather is." "Does he know you're here?" Raymond smiled faintly. he designed the resignation. For the first time in days, I felt the balance move. Raymond handed me a final document. It was the trust's medical and ethical conduct clause. Any fiduciary who used reproductive material, medical records, or guardianship proceedings to manipulate succession could be permanently disqualified from trust management. Grandpa had added it after learning about an unrelated fertility scandal in 1998 and why Mother had not merely failed to take the trust, why arranging Naomi's pregnancy, she had triggered the exact clause that could remove her forever. Thursday, Raymond said, Vivian plans to announce that Sophie has no succession rights. I looked at the old recording of Grandpa, then Thursday is when she loses hers. Chapter 18. Building the chain. The next 3 days were the quietest of my life. They were also the most important. Maya's forensic team recovered the metadata from the fertility consent photographed in Evan's hidden album. The document had allegedly been signed on October 14. It was created on November 2. 19 days later, the file's original author account belonged to Evan. Dr. Crane's reports about Sophie had been written from a template used in 2 unrelated custody cases. She had copied entire paragraphs, including the wrong child's age in a hidden revision. The pharmacy provided security footage showing Evan collecting Naomi's altered medication. The store could not prove he had switched the contents, but the recording destroyed his claim that he never handled the bottle. Naomi signed a sworn declaration. She admitted the affair, the false assumptions under which she entered the surrogacy arrangement, and her use of my patient identity, in exchange for no promised immunity. She agreed to cooperate with medical investigators and the court. Peter Lang still refused to tell the truth. No longer needed him. The school concert video proved I could not have attended the notarization. Metadata proved the document did not yet exist on the date he claimed to witness it. Lakeview's backup provider located an encrypted copy of the clinic database in off-site storage. A preservation order prevented Dr. Leland from deleting it. The restored record showed my electronic consent had been accessed from an internet address assigned to the Mercer Hotel. Evan had created the authorization from the room where he later lived with Naomi. The bank transfer from Harbor Family Services led back to an account controlled by my mother. The party's full event recording showed Vivian's insult, Grandpa's response, the synchronized photograph, and Evan's attempt to disconnect the frame. It also captured something no one noticed that night. While the room focused on the screen, my mother leaned toward Evan and whispered, "Get Claire's signature tonight, or we lose the window." A microphone near the head table recorded every word. One by one, the burned beams broke beneath them, did not release anything publicly. Silence made Evan confident. Sent me a settlement proposal Wednesday evening, could keep the house, retain limited shares, and have primary custody of Sophie if I agreed not to challenge the surrogacy, the baby's parentage, or Vivian's control of the trust. At the bottom, Evan had written, "This is the last chance I can give you." I returned the document. And signed beneath his sentence, I wrote, "You should have sat down when Grandpa asked." Chapter 19. The Heritage Galaith Bennett Foundation Gala took place inside Union Station's restored presidential suite. The event was live-streamed because my mother wanted the world to watch her accept temporary leadership of the family legacy. She arrived wearing silver. Evan wore a tuxedo and the expression of a man who believed paperwork had already won. Naomi did not appear publicly, Evan's attorneys claimed. She was resting under medical supervision. In reality, she waited with Maya in a private room upstairs. Sophie stayed with Mrs. Alvarez at Grandpa's house. I would not use my daughter as a prop in a public war about whether she belonged. My mother took the stage at 8. Families experience painful transitions, she began. In recent weeks, my father's declining health and my daughter Claire's emotional difficulties have forced us to make responsible decisions. A photograph of Grandpa appeared behind her. He looked frail in the image they had chosen. Effective tonight, I will serve as interim chair of the Bennett Family Trust and Foundation. Applause began hesitantly. Evan joined her on stage. My mother continued, "We are also delighted to confirm that our family will soon welcome a new biological descendant." A spotlight moved toward an empty chair reserved for Naomi. Confusion spread through the ballroom. Evan took the microphone. Naomi is receiving medical care and cannot attend. Claire originally supported our private gestational arrangement. Unfortunately, personal jealousy has caused her to challenge decisions she previously approved. That was my cue. I stepped from the rear entrance. The room erupted with whispers. My mother's smile remained in place. You were asked not to attend, she said. I'm a foundation trustee. You are suspended. Not anymore. I walked toward the stage. Evan moved to block the stairs. Then another voice came from behind the curtain. Let her pass. Grandpa Henry emerged in a wheelchair, pushed by Raymond Shaw. My mother went white. Dad, you should be in bed. I was, Grandpa said. Then I heard you were giving away my company. He looked across the ballroom, exactly as he had at his birthday dinner. He lifted one hand. Everyone sit down. This time, no one hesitated. Chapter 20. What real family means. Raymond connected Sophie's silver digital frame to the gala projector. My mother stared at it. That device contains stolen private material. It contains cached material synchronized from Evan's own account, Raymond replied. The originals have been preserved under court order. The first image appeared Evan kissing Naomi outside Lakeview Fertility Center. The second showed my mother in Dr. Leland's office. The third showed the succession schedule. Then the screen displayed Grandpa's recorded trust statement from 2004. His younger voice filled the room. Any legally adopted child shall be equal in every distribution, vote, protection, and benefit. No trustee may establish a preference for bloodline. When the recording ended, Grandpa looked toward my mother. Sophie was never outside this family. You were simply too small-minded to understand the family I built. Vivian recovered enough to lift her chin. A sentimental recording does not change the need for competent leadership. No, Raymond said. The trust does. He displayed the medical and ethical conduct clause. My mother's expression changed as she read it. Any person who manipulated reproductive material or guardianship proceedings to influence succession was permanently disqualified. Evan grabbed the microphone. This proves nothing. Claire approved the surrogacy. The forged consent appeared on the screen. Then the file metadata, created November 2. Allegedly signed October 14. Author, Evan Cole. The school concert live stream played next. At 8:14 p.m. on October 14. I sat in the front row while Sophie sang Beneath Paper Stars. At the same minute, Peter Lang claimed I had signed the consent 30 miles away. Guests began murmuring. Evan's face reddened. Electronic timestamps can be altered. So can affidavits, Maya said from the aisle. She entered with Naomi. Naomi wore a simple navy dress and walked slowly, one hand beneath her stomach. Camera flashes exploded. Evan stepped toward her. What are you doing? Telling the truth. You're confused. No, she said. You needed me confused. The pharmacy footage appeared. Evan collecting her prescription. Then the smartwatch recording played. His voice described taking Sophie, declaring me unstable, and forcing Naomi to sign away her rights after the birth, when my mother's recorded voice said, "The baby matters. The carrier does not." Naomi closed her eyes. The ballroom became completely silent. I looked at Evan. You lied to your wife, your mistress, your daughter, the clinic, the court, and the family whose company you intended to steal. He lowered his voice. Claire, don't do this. You did this. Chapter 21. The signature that couldn't forge. My mother attempted one final move. She removed a document from her folder. My father transferred temporary authority to me voluntarily. Raymond examined it for several seconds. This signature is genuine, Vivian said. You cannot dismiss everything as forgery. Grandpa looked at the page. It is my signature. A ripple of uncertainty moved through the audience. My mother's confidence returned. You see? It is the signature from my 2021 hospital directive, Grandpa continued. You copied it. Raymond displayed both documents side by side. The signatures matched perfectly, too perfectly. Every tremor, ink break, and pressure point was identical. Real signatures varied. Copied signatures did not. More importantly, the document Vivian presented referenced a trust account that had been closed 4 years earlier. Raymond then opened a sealed envelope retrieved from the foundation bank that afternoon. Inside were Grandpa's valid voting proxies. They activated automatically upon the filing of any competency petition by a family trustee. By petitioning to control him, my mother had transferred his voting authority to me. Grandpa smiled. You should read documents before weaponizing them, Vivian. Raymond called for the scheduled trustee vote. using Grandpa's proxy and my own restored shares, I voted to remove Vivian as acting chair. 2 independent trustees joined me. The motion passed. A second vote suspended Evan as chief financial officer pending investigation into fraud, misuse of company funds, and interference with medical records. That motion passed unanimously. Security officers approached the stage. Evan looked at me. We can still fix this privately. No, the baby is ours. The baby is not a bargaining chip. I'm the father. And you used that fact to commit fraud. My mother stood frozen beside the podium. What happens to me? She asked Grandpa. He studied her for a long moment. You spend the rest of your life learning that blood does not excuse betrayal. She turned toward me. Claire, I did this for the family. You did it for control. I gave you a biological child. You stole my choice. You would have destroyed the embryo. That decision was mine to make. Her voice sharpened. You will regret humiliating me. I thought of Sophie asking whether she was pretend. No, I said. I regret allowing you near my daughter for this long. Security escorted my mother and Evan from the stage. Police did not arrest them that night. Real investigations did not move at the speed of gala speeches. But the evidence had been transferred to prosecutors, medical regulators, the family court, and the company's independent audit committee. Their consequences had begun, and this time, no edited video could hide the full story. The live stream had been watched by more than 200,000 people. Chapter 22. After the applause, people applauded when Evan was removed, hated the sound. There was satisfaction in watching the truth become undeniable. But there was no joy in seeing 15 years of my life reduced to evidence slides. I left the ballroom before the reception resumed. Grandpa found me in a quiet corridor overlooking the train platforms. You won, he said. We exposed them. That is what winning looks like some days. I don't feel victorious. You shouldn't. People who enjoy destroying family are usually the ones who made destruction necessary. I sat beside his wheelchair. Did you know Mom was capable of this? I knew she valued legacy more than people. I did not know how far she would go. You defended Sophie too late. He lowered his head. Yes. The admission surprised me. I kept believing Vivian's behavior was unpleasant rather than dangerous, he said. That was cowardice dressed as patience. I took his hand. Will you testify in the competency case? With enthusiasm. Naomi emerged from the ballroom with Maya. She looked pale. The baby is moving, she said. Are you all right? I don't know. Her cooperation had helped me, but it did not erase her choices. She had continued the affair after learning I still believed I was married. She had worn my bracelet, entered my home during my absence, and participated in hiding the pregnancy. Forgiveness was not required for compassion. Your attorney will meet you at the hospital, Maya told her. Independent counsel, not anyone connected to Evan. Naomi nodded. Before leaving, she turned to me. What do you want to happen after the birth? The question had haunted me. The baby was genetically mine, but genetics were the very weapon my mother had used against Sophie. I want every decision to be made without lies, I said. And with someone representing the baby's interests. Do you want him? Him. A son. I placed a hand against my heart. I don't know yet. Naomi's eyes filled. Neither do I. For once, either of us pretended certainty. Chapter 23. The divorce table. Evan asked to see me 2 days later. Mia arranged the meeting in a conference room with attorneys present. Looked smaller without his tailored suit and corporate title. His company access had been revoked. His accounts connected to Harbor Family Services were frozen. The state medical board had opened an investigation into Lakeview, and federal authorities were reviewing the movement of reproductive material across state lines. Still believed he could negotiate. I made mistakes, he began. You committed crimes. That hasn't been determined. The metadata is clear. I was trying to preserve an embryo you wanted destroyed. You forged my consent. I knew you would regret the decision. You did not have the right to decide what I would regret. He leaned forward. Claire, that baby is part of us. No. He is a person. That is why what you did is worse. I can be a good father. You tried to send Sophie away. That was Vivian's idea. You paid the tuition. I wanted stability during the divorce. You had not told me we were divorcing. He rubbed both hands over his face. Naomi manipulated me. You wrote the forged document. She made me feel valued. I valued you. You valued the version of me that obeyed. His eyes hardened. For a moment, I saw the man from the study again, then his expression softened. What would it take for you to stop cooperating with prosecutors? There is nothing you can offer. The house? It is partly mine. My retirement account? Marital property. Full custody of Sophie? My stomach turned. You're offering me our daughter like a settlement asset. I'm saying I won't fight. You never wanted to fight for her. That isn't fair. No. What you did to her isn't fair. Maya placed the divorce petition on the table. Evan stared at it. I love you, he said quietly, remembered how desperately I would have wanted those words 2 weeks earlier. Now they sounded like another claim of ownership. You loved access, I said. To my family, my company, my body, and my trust. You never learned the difference. I signed the petition, then I left him at the table with nothing left to offer. Chapter 24 Sophie's question. The full party video cleared my public reputation faster than any statement could have. People who had condemned me began sending apologies. Board members who voted to suspend me claimed they had been misled. Dr. Crane withdrew her report and surrendered her license pending investigation. Peter Lang finally admitted the notarization fraud after learning the metadata had made his second affidavit impossible to defend. Dr. Leland resigned from Lakeview. My mother released a statement accusing Grandpa and me of misunderstanding her intentions. Oh, one believed her. Sophie cared about none of it. She wanted to know whether Evan would attend her school play. I don't think he can, I said, because he lied? Yes. Is he going to jail? I don't know. Do you still love him? Children asked questions adults spent years avoiding. I love parts of the life we had, I said. But I don't trust him, and I won't live with him again. She nodded slowly. Is the baby my brother? He is genetically related to me and Evan. So yes? If the court decides I am one of his legal parents, and if he comes to live with us, then yes. But Grandma said blood makes real family. Grandma was wrong. Then why does everybody keep talking about the baby being your real baby? I sat beside her on the bed, because adults sometimes use careless words when they're scared. Will you love him more because he came from your embryo? No. How do you know? Because love isn't a measuring cup. She considered this. What if he cries all night? Then I might love sleep more. Sophie laughed. The sound loosened something in my chest. Then she became serious. If he comes here, can we tell him I picked him too? I blinked back tears. Yes. Because nobody should think they're pretend. I pulled her into my arms. Why mother had tried to use one child's biology to erase another child's belonging. Sophie responded by making room. That was the difference between inheritance and family. Point one was something people fought to possess. The other was something a child knew how to give. Chapter 25 The birth. Naomi went into labor 6 weeks early. The hospital called me at 2:17 in the morning because a temporary parentage order required notification of all parties. Evan was allowed to attend. Under supervision, I remained in the waiting room with Maya for 6 hours. I listened to hospital doors open and close, thought about the embryo I had mourned, thought about the decision I believed I had made, thought about a child entering the world beneath the weight of contracts, lies, and arguments over ownership. At 8:43 a.m., a nurse brought me to the neonatal unit. The baby was small but breathing on his own. Naomi lay exhausted in a recovery room. Evan stood behind glass with a court-appointed supervisor. When he saw me, he pressed one hand to the window, did not go to him. A social worker explained that the baby would remain in the hospital while the parentage case proceeded. Because I was the genetic mother and the embryo transfer lacked valid consent, the court recognized my potential parental claim. Because Evan was the genetic father, he also had a claim, though his conduct would influence custody. Naomi had carried and delivered the baby, giving her rights that could not simply be ignored because of a fraudulent contract. there would be hearings, evaluations, independent attorneys, nothing would be instant. That was as it should be. Naomi asked to see me. She looked toward the bassinet beside her bed. Evan wants to name him Henry, she said. What do you want? I called him Noah when I talked to him. Then he knows that voice. She began to cry. I don't think I can raise him. Every time I look at him, I see what we did. That isn't his fault. I know. You don't have to decide today. I want him to know I loved him. You can tell him. Will you? The question carried no legal force, only grief. If he comes home with me, I said, I will tell him the truth in a way that never makes him responsible for it. Naomi closed her eyes. Thank you. Later, I stood beside the bassinet. Noah's fingers curled around mine. I felt love, not the instant, magical certainty people promised in movies, something quieter. A recognition. A responsibility. A decision beginning. Chapter 26 Consequences. The investigations lasted 11 months. Evan pleaded guilty to charges involving identity fraud, falsification of medical consent, and financial misconduct. His agreement included prison time, restitution, and cooperation in the case against Dr. Leland. His professional credentials were revoked. The Bennett Heritage Board terminated him permanently, and my mother avoided prison but was found civilly liable for fraud, invasion of medical privacy, and conspiracy. She lost all trustee authority and was ordered to repay funds diverted through Harbor Family Services. Grandpa removed her from foundation leadership, did not remove her basic income interest from the family trust. He said poverty would not teach Vivian empathy, but powerlessness might teach her limits. Naomi received a reduced sentence of probation after cooperating. The court recognized that she had participated in deception but had also been misled about my consent during the initial medical process. She voluntarily withdrew her parentage claim after months of independent counseling. The decision was not purchased, it was not demanded. She requested limited future contact through a structured agreement, which I accepted. Evan retained legal paternity but received no immediate custody. Because of his attempts to manipulate both children and falsify psychological evidence, any future visitation required court supervision and therapeutic review. Noah came home at 4 months old. Sophie decorated his room with silver stars. Above the crib, she placed a new family portrait. This one was not digital, she drew it herself. Grandpa sat in the center with his cane, stood beside Sophie. Noah appeared as a round-faced baby wrapped in green. Mrs. Alvarez, Maya, and our dog were included. At the edge of the page, Sophie drew an empty chair. Who sits there? I asked. Anybody who chooses to stay. I framed the picture of Bennett Heritage recovered from the scandal. I returned as executive chair and created an independent ethics office with authority over family members and executives alike. No one would again confuse a last name with permission. Grandpa retired fully on his 86th birthday. At dinner, he raised his glass to Sophie, to the person who accidentally saved the company with a picture frame. Sophie grinned. I told you it was a good present. Grandpa laughed. It was the best present I ever received. Chapter 27 My mother at the gate. My mother came to my house once. She arrived without calling and stood outside the gate holding a gift for Noah. I spoke to her through the intercom. I want to see my grandson, she said. You don't have a grandson here. Her face tightened. He is biologically. That sentence is why you cannot enter. I have apologized. You issued a statement saying your intentions were misunderstood. I was trying to protect the family. You tried to remove Sophie from it. I made mistakes. You built a medical conspiracy. She looked toward the security camera. I am still your mother. Biology doesn't create access. The words hung between us. She had used the same principle to exclude Sophie. Now she understood its other edge. You would keep me from my own blood, she asked. I am protecting my children from someone who ranks their worth by blood. She lowered the gift. Does Sophie hate me? No, that seemed to surprise her. She feels sorry for you. My mother flinched. She said it must be lonely to love a family tree more than the people on it. Vivian looked down. For 1 second, I saw regret, then pride covered it. You'll need me someday. Perhaps. And then? If that day comes, I will decide based on who you have become, not who gave birth to me. I ended the call. She remained at the gate for several minutes before leaving the gift on the pavement. Inside was a silver baby cup engraved with the Bennett crest. Donated it. Noah already had a family name, did not need a symbol of ownership. Chapter 28. The new portrait. 1 year after Grandpa's birthday dinner, we held a smaller celebration at his house. No ballroom, no press, no succession speeches. Sophie carried the restored digital frame into the library. The forensic team had returned. After the criminal cases ended, she created a new album called The People Who Stayed. The first photograph showed Grandpa holding Noah, the second showed Maya standing beside me after the final custody hearing. The third showed Naomi during a supervised visit, reading Noah a board book while a counselor sat nearby. The fourth showed Sophie at her school play, bowing beneath paper stars. The last image was the hand-drawn family portrait above Noah's crib. Grandpa wiped his eyes. You made me look too old. You are old. I can still change the trust. Sophie laughed. During dinner, Grandpa asked whether she wanted to say grace. She shook her head. I want to say something else. She stood on her chair. Last year, Grandma said I wasn't real family. The adults became quiet. Sophie continued. I used to think real meant you came from somebody's stomach. But Noah came from Aunt Naomi's stomach and Mom's embryo, and Grandpa says families can get complicated. Grandpa nodded solemnly. Extremely complicated. So I decided real family means the people who tell the truth even when it's hard, and the people who don't leave when things get messy. She looked at me, and sometimes people leave because staying would be bad. That can be love too. I covered my mouth. Maya whispered, she's wiser than every adult in the criminal case. Sophie raised her glass of apple juice. To real family. We repeated the words. This time, no one needed bloodline charts, trust clauses, or medical files to define them. Chapter 29. The Portland container. After the celebration, Raymond asked to speak with me privately. He carried a thin gray folder. My happiness faded the moment I saw the Lakeview Fertility Center logo. The federal audit is complete, he said. What did they find? The Maryland container held the embryo transferred to Naomi. And Portland? The shipping record was authentic. My pulse quickened. Was it another embryo? Yes. That's impossible. The clinic's original laboratory notes show 4 viable embryos were created during your treatment, not 3. I sat down. No one ever told me there were 4. One embryo was marked unsuitable for transfer after abnormal screening. Then why was it shipped? It was reclassified months later. By whom? Dr. Leland. The Portland clinic had closed 3 years earlier. Its patient records had been acquired by a private reproductive health network. Raymond slid a copy of the shipping manifest across the table. The recipient was hidden behind a court-sealed identification number. But the authorization line contained a name, not Evans, not my mother's, my late father's. Thomas Bennett had died 7 years before the container left Lakeview. That has to be another forged signature. Possibly. Why would anyone use Dad's name? We don't know. The shipment had occurred the same night my mother, Evan, Naomi, Peter, and Dr. Leland entered the clinic through the rear door. They had removed 2 containers. Naomi received one in Portland received the other. Is there a child? I asked. Raymond hesitated. The network reported a live birth. My hands went cold. When? 8 months before Noah. Where is the child? The record is sealed. Who carried the embryo? We filed a request. Does my mother know? We haven't asked. I looked through the library window. Sophie was outside showing Noah how to touch the lavender without pulling it from the ground. Thought the conspiracy had been about creating one biological heir. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe Naomi's pregnancy had only been the part of the plan that accidentally became visible. Raymond closed the folder. There is one more thing. He handed me a photograph recovered from Dr. Leland's private archive. It showed my father standing beside the doctor inside Lakeview Fertility Center. The timestamp was dated 6 months after my father's funeral. Chapter 30. The voice in the archive. I stared at the photograph until the faces blurred. My father was dead. I attended his funeral, Raymond said. So did you. The man in the image had my father's height, his posture, and the scar beside his left eyebrow was older than I remembered, but unmistakable. On the back of the photograph, someone had written, "The first heir must remain hidden until Henry's succession is secure." My phone rang. The number was blocked. Raymond told me not to answer. I did anyway. For several seconds, there was only static, then a man spoke. "Claire." My body forgot how to breathe, and no one else said my name that way. The voice belonged to the person who had taught me to read blueprints, to repair cracked plaster, and to recognize when a building looked weaker than it truly was. My father. "You found the Portland record," he said. "Who is this?" "You know. My father is dead." That was the safest version of the truth. I stood so quickly the chair fell behind me. Raymond reached for the phone, but I stepped away. "Where is the child?" I demanded. The voice became quieter, with the only person who understood what Vivian was willing to do. "Who?" The line crackled, then my father said the words that opened an entirely new fire beneath everything we had survived. "Sophie's adoption was never an accident." The call ended outside. My daughter looked toward the library window as though she had heard something. She lifted Noah into her arms and smiled at me. On the lawn behind her, a black car waited beyond Grandpa's gate. A man stepped out. He had silver hair, a scar beside his left eyebrow, and my father's face, and beside him stood a woman holding the hand of a little boy who looked exactly like Noah. For more exciting content, please subscribe and follow us.